how likable is it for the people to be able to elect a prime minister without interference or manipulation? Also, does such a step undermine the role of the parliament?
I'm glad you called it a half-baked idea, because in a parliamentary form of government, this is not the way prime minister is elected. It has a different kind of a philosophy where a collective government is run through a cabinet, and prime minister is the leader of the cabinet. And they're elected from the parliament, and powers reside with the parliament. And it is the parliament which removes them if they lose trust of the majority of members. I think they should have rather come out very openly and said that they would rather go for a presidential form of government, and then this would have made more sense. But having directly elected prime minister is something which is unheard of. So therefore, I would say that this is something which has to be debated quite a bit among the people in the parliament before this kind of a constitutional amendment could be accepted, because you will have to do the constitutional amendment to do that. And to get two-thirds majority in the parliament will require a lot of consensus building. And that seems to be very difficult, at least in the short-term future. You have mentioned about the manifestos. Sadly, in Pakistan, manifestos are not taken very seriously. People do not base their decision about voting on the manifestos. Very few people read it, and even fewer people make their decision according to the manifesto. And therefore, manifestos is a kind of a formality which every party completes, but tries to complete it rather casually and towards the very end, when it is very close to the polling day. So therefore, these manifestos are good for think tanks, for research organizations, for international organizations to try to make some sense of the direction which party may take. But actually, for the people and for the masses, these manifestos do not really have any importance. They don't read it. They don't make their decision on this basis.
And maybe it's because people have not been seeing a lot of what is said in the manifestos turn into actions, and that's why they've also lost confidence. And maybe it's the way things happen here, because maybe in the developed world, manifestos, I think, hold a lot of central position in this whole electoral process, and people do read them, and they sort of expect the politicians and the leaders to at least fulfill some of the things that are mentioned there.
More than manifestos, people are swayed by the slogans, by the narratives which leaders tend to make in their speeches and their rallies. Manifesto is a more serious thing. And during elections, most of the people do not pay attention to serious things. They are more emotionally carried away by the slogans, by the narratives they build about the martyrdom of one leader or the other, or the victimhood of another leader. So these kind of emotive reasons are the ones which decide people's vote. I look forward to a future where there are no more emotive reasons, there are no more victims, there are no more martyrs, and people are able to make up their minds on dispassionately based on what is written in the manifestos. But that is not the situation at the moment.
Yes, for that we probably also need to take our literacy level up and work more on education.
Yes.
The caretaker government has received a lot of criticism for disrupting internet access for the whole country. Each of the last three outages took place concurrently with the PTI's pre-announced digital jalsas. Now, it's also disturbing that the PTA has said that there might be further outages as elections draw nearer, something which will not only impact the economy in these times of remote working options, Perhaps it'll cause us losses in billions, not only to businesses, but also to individuals. Now, social media platforms are also prominent fronts in the war of political narratives, and they are being restricted closer to the polls. PTI moved their website recently to GitHub after their previous websites were blocked. How far do you think is the government going to go with this clampdown? I mean, there appears to be no end to this.
My very frank assessment is they will go to any extent to make sure that PTI does not return to power. And even it doesn't have a sizable presence in the parliament. This is my very frank assessment. So this is what has been happening in the past. We have seen this happening in 2018. Government went to any extent to remove a party, to declare its party's head disqualified for life, removing him from chairmanship of the party. And not only that, many of the party stalwarts were also jailed. Even the tickets issued by the party head were not accepted, and they were made to run as independent candidates in the Senate election. So they went to any extent. And this has happened with Pakistan People's Party. This has happened with PMLN, and this is happening with PTI. And this may happen with any other party in future. I don't know how long it will last. But you asked me a question, and I gave you a very blunt answer to that. They will go to any extent. We have never seen in the past elections that a party which has been removed has returned to power in the immediately next election. This is not a coincidence, and I think same is going to happen this time. Sad but true.
Yeah, but does the government realize that this time there's a huge number of young voters that has been added? The surge, I think, has gone up to 56.8 million from 46 million in 2018. And the youth, they formulate almost 44% of the voters, placing this group in a position to play a game-changing role in determining the outcome of elections. We can perhaps expect a lot of upsets with this changed demographic. And does the state realize that it's dealing with a predominantly digital generation, perhaps not as easy to mute online and otherwise as the government might think?
Young voters' percentage had been more or less the same since the last election, and even before that, 44%. Although the number has increased, but the percentage has remained the same. But the problem with young people is that while they have such a large percentage of registered voters, they don't turn out to vote. We have seen in the past 8 elections that while the average overall voter turnout was around 45%, the young people's voter turnout was around 31%. So about 14 percentage points lower than the average, which is quite in contrast to India, where young people vote more than the average voter turnout. There it was 69% in 2019 compared to 66% for the overall average. So young people don't turn out to vote. They turned out to vote in greater numbers, relatively greater numbers in 2013. And I think probably it was Imran Khan phenomena which made them come out to vote. And they voted around, I think, 37% at that time. But since then, they have again gone down in 2018. And I'm not sure if they are going to vote this time. Although I think we have tried to do our best to encourage them that whatever be their perception about the manipulation of election, they must turn out to vote. If there are more people turning out to vote, the chances of manipulating the election will be less. Although one cannot rule out any possibility, but young people and old people or any age people should come out to vote in as many numbers as possible if they want to really see that their vote and their power is reflected in the results of the election.